we're going on to the Arizona Cardinals and the NFC West. Arizona Cardinals are going to finish 6th in the composite, B+ per PFF. They had a lot of picks. Most picks in the draft here, at least 12, right?
12, I think.
Starts with Marvin Harrison Jr. We went through all these debates. Are they going to trade down? Are they going to take the blue chip player? They go with Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. They come back with Darius Robinson, the edge, out of Missouri at pick 27. 2 different cornerbacks that they brought in, Max Melton in the second round out of Rutgers, Elijah Jones out of Boston College in round 3. A couple Illinois players, Isaiah Adams, going to probably play guard, Tip Ryman, the tight end, in back-to-back Illinois guys in round 3. Trey Benson, running back at Florida State. Xavier Thomas, a guy that Renner loved as a draft prospect like 6 years ago as a freshman when he was in Clemson. Played a lot of ball at Clemson, but to get him at the 5th. So a lot of players here for the Cardinals. What do you think of their draft?
Yeah, and the lot of players thing, I think both of us like as a general concept. Like, even forget who they're drafting for a moment, just simply picking 12 times I like as a concept. It gives you the flexibility to double dip and triple dip at certain positions, right? The Packers approach, let's call it for the sake of argument. I like that as a strategy. I think it's a smart way of doing things. But I also I think that they've played this really well and taken a couple of different strategies, right? The general idea with the Packers approach of drafting a ton of times is if you need somebody to come in and make an impact, don't rely on one guy doing that, because you might be wrong. Nobody's great at this. So let's draft 2 or 3 players at that position on the basis that one of them might make that impact. And it might not be the first guy that you thought of. But I think remember, you always talk about the sort of level of certainty you have that a guy is going to be special, right? Quentin Nelson was probably the most obvious example of somebody that everybody was completely convinced that guy wasn't just going to be good, but was going to be amazing at the next level, right? So that's probably as high as the confidence quotient gets in a player. Marvin Harrison, I think, is going to be pretty high, is pretty close to Quentin Nelson in terms of total and complete confidence that he's going to be a good NFL wide receiver. So I think at that point you can say, well, we don't need to draft 3 or 4 wide receivers. Marvin Harrison's going to do it, So we'll draft him. He's our guy. We'll put all our eggs in that basket and we're cool. To an extent, Darius Robinson lower down in the first round as well. But then corner, now we're down to the second round. We're down to the second wave guys that we don't have as much confidence in. So we're going to need to draft multiple corners. Let's draft 3 of these guys because one of them is going to be good enough to make a contribution. Same with offensive tackle. Let's draft multiple guys on the offensive line. So I think the Cardinals kind of played both sides of this in a way that I quite like. Like, at some point, you have so much confidence in a guy like Marvin Harrison, you can basically just say, we're good. But then other positions, that's why we need 12 picks. We'll draft 3 players at corner, and we'll let them all battle it out, and somebody will be good. And if all 3 of them are good, great. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on Marvin Harrison Jr. I feel really good about him. I'm glad that he didn't fall out of the top 4 or 5. There were rumors. Look, and there were enough teams probably that did have Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr., and the Giants are thrilled to get Neighbors. But I feel good about Marvin Harrison Jr. and what he's able to do with Kyler Murray in this offense. Darius Robinson, another guy, bit of a tweener body type, as you mentioned, would have been maybe a top 10 pick for a 3-4 team in the mid-2000s with his size and his length. And he played on the interior at Missouri. I don't think that's a great fit to just put him at defensive tackle. Played on the edge last year and was better, and then went to the Senior Bowl, moved around, and as I've said before, had the best pass rushing grade we've ever graded during Senior Bowl practice reps. So that's something that they just needed, man. They just needed help on the defensive line, regardless of position. Xavier Thomas in the 5th from Clemson adds a little bit of juice off the edge. Both of those guys have a chance to contribute right away. And the 2 corners, the first 2 corners off the board at least, they also added 7th rounder Jaden Davis. But I wrote that article highlighting upside type of players before the draft. The 2 corners that I mentioned are both Arizona Cardinals. Max Melton from Rutgers, Elijah Jones from Boston College. Both guys had incredible workouts. Elijah Jones had really good production last year, not much before that. Max Melton never graded above 73 for PFF, but his athletic profile, very similar to guys like Jonathan Jones, who came out of Auburn, played for the Patriots, has played for the Patriots for a few years and has had a decent career. And then even first-rounder Deonte Banks from the Giants last year out of Maryland, similar 40s, verticals, explosion drills. So I think Max Melton, I think he's got work to do just as a football player, but as far as like a pure upside athletic profile type, that's what the Cardinals brought in with those two corners.
So Darius Robinson, we said this before, if he was 15 years ago, he'd be a top 10 draft pick for one of those 3-4 teams. The guy that he reminded me of the most of that group was Richard Seymour. Do you have Darius Robinson's height, weight, and 40 time handy?
I can get it, sure.
Okay. I believe he's 6'5". Richard Seymour was 6'6".
I don't have the exact.
What did he weigh in at? Because it was 290 something, right?
I just have whatever they listed, 6'5", 296. Let me get the exact here.
Seymour was 299 back when he weighed in the combine, and then the 40
Seymour's
time.
a much better football player.
With the 40 time was the thing I'm most interested in.
So yeah, we got him at 6'5", 285.
Okay.
34.5-inch arms and
Yeah.
a 4.95 40.
Richard Seymour ran a 4.95 40.
I mean, Richard Seymour's a much better football player.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
But
you're saying like body type, length, and style and everything. Right?
Yeah, but he's also, I mean, Richard Seymour went in the top 10 somewhere back in whenever it was that he was drafted.
Well, get to the shuttle and the cone.
I don't have that for Seymour. He doesn't seem to have had a full combine. I'm working from sketchy information.
So like Robinson, if you call Robinson an edge, a 4.76 shuttle,
But that's why,
is
yeah.
8th percentile.
So I don't
and
think
a 7.87 cone is 5th.
I think you need to call him an interior player because of the, like, if he is a 3-4 end effectively in an old school system. Now they're still not good numbers, but to me that's why he's just out of his era. Like, he belongs 15 years ago in those old 3-4 systems.
I don't know if these percentiles are changing properly. No, they are. There we go. Yeah, it's still so obviously the numbers look better athletically if you call him an interior player, but the change of direction is still not great.
Right.
The comparison I've used before is because I use my model as a proxy, PFF production as a proxy. Jermaine Johnson, when he came out of Florida State a couple years ago, had solid college production, a lot of sacks, pretty good PFF numbers, but not great over the course of his career. But then he went and dominated the Senior Bowl. And then in the NFL, similar, kind of took him a little bit of time, has been a rotational rusher and come into his own a little bit last year. I think Robinson might have a similar, not necessarily path, but similar level of production. Like, I think he'll do some damage at the next level, but I don't think he's like an elite first-round type of talent. But if they're playing three-man fronts too, that's a good fit for his skill set.
Yeah,
And the rest of the Cardinals' interior defensive linemen, not great. It's not a great group.
Yeah, but that's why the point I'm making is that I think a lot of him not being a high-end first-round skill set is simply the game has changed away from him. Like, again, the 2000, I think he would genuinely be. I think we would be saying he is a top 10 talent in 2000, not in 2024. He's got legit length. He's got that inside-outside flexibility back in that type of scheme. He's really, really strong. He's got a much better first step. Like, he's got a 40 time that's almost 5 seconds, 4.95, and his change of direction numbers are crappy. But his first step is actually legit. Like, he puts people in serious conflict with that first step off the line. He can shed blocks well. If you don't block him with an offensive lineman, he just runs right through the dude trying to block him, whether it's a running back or a tight end. He's actually, I think, pretty athletic one-on-one in space. Like, quarterbacks can't just get around him the way they can. I forget who we were talking about recently that was it Mason Smith, the LSU D lineman, where if you just sidestep him in the backfield, gone.
Was it Sweat?
No, I think it was Mason Smith, the LSU D tackle, where like he's really good straight line, but a quarterback can basically just take a step to the left and he barrels right by him and he's gone, right? Can't do that with Darius Robinson. He's really difficult to shake that way. Now, if you can get around him, he runs a 5-second 40, so you can just keep running and you're gone. But it's not easy to get around this guy. I genuinely think we're talking about somebody that has top 10 talent circa 2000. But it's 2024, so
and he goes at 27.
Right, so he's fringe first round guy.
Anyone else you want to highlight? Trey Benson, a second running back off the board.
Yep,
as my haiku predicted.
As your haiku predicted.
Tough to tackle. Had that one back shoulder catch against Clemson that shows that he could be a pass game weapon.
I mean, a lot of people's RB1 in this draft class, and again, don't disagree. I feel like the Audric Estime thing, or if you fast forward 2 years and tell me Trey Benson's the best running back to come out of this class, I'm not surprised at all. Finds creases really well. He's pretty patient. He's the most prototypical physical specimen of all these running backs, 6'1", 220 with good speed, 4.4 type speed. his profile from the measurables point of view stacks up really well to like Breece Hall, right? Remember when he was coming out and he was seen as the best running back from that class. Hall's, I never quite understood why he was seen as, only a second round guy as opposed to a first round talent. But Trey Benson feels kind of similar. He's the most prototypical of all these running backs. Not necessarily special, but I think just good at everything. So I think that's a good pick.
Any UDFAs? Look,
I think
because the Cardinals don't have they have one of the worst rosters in the NFL. A lot
Right.
of these guys are coming in with a chance to compete. You might get 4th, 5th, 6th rounders getting some serious playing time here. So adding volume made a lot of sense here for the Cardinals.
Yeah, Elijah Jones, the corner from Boston College, was a player that a lot of people liked. Another one of the ones. This draft seemed to have a ton of guys that were really good in man coverage for some reason. I'm not quite sure if that's a trend or just a weird year. But Jones, another one of those guys, is very good getting physical and staying with guys. Christian Jones is an interesting offensive tackle prospect, former soccer player, and has stupid footwork because of it. Like obviously he's an offensive tackle, right? He's a huge human being, but this was a guy that had quite an extensive sort of history as a kid of playing soccer, and that gives you, I don't want to say a performance enhancing. Lasting impact, because that has some different connotations.
Can't say performance enhancing.
But it is kind of the same idea, right? If you get like, there's a sort of logic that if you feed kids steroids at an early enough age, even if you stop them doing the steroids, they've got an unfair advantage for the rest of their lives because of those years, right? Think of soccer the same way, right? You get a kid a soccer background, that's not going away. He has like a permanent inbuilt advantage over other people in terms of footwork and movement skills, because that guy was playing a sport that leans on that more than anything else. So he shifted to football. He's become a prototypical giant 300-pound offensive tackle prospect, but he has better footwork than most because of that soccer upbringing and background.
Good insight there on Christian Jones. A little bit of an older prospect, held his own at the Senior Bowl, goes in round 5. And again, I think all of these guys have a chance to contribute or at least compete for spots on the Cardinals.
They signed almost nobody from an undrafted. They have a 3-man undrafted free agent signing class. One of whom was
all draft picks.
One of whom is a long snapper.